The entire contention that the DNC hack came from the Russians comes from a group called CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike has two main executives who are public in this. Sean Henry, former head of cybersecurity for the FBI. Let's point that out. Former FBI guy. The other one is Dmitry Alperovich, Russian-born, and they were hired by the DNC to come in and look at the hack. When the FBI asked the DNC to look at the servers, they were denied multiple times at different levels. Now, I'm going to point out that James Comey admitted this in a January 10th article. In January 10th testimony in front of the Senate Intelligence Committee, which is in my article. It's linked in my article. None of this is conjecture. So starting last June 14th, the Washington Post came out with an article that the DNC obviously worked with the Post to get out there, talking about how the DNC had been hacked and using CrowdStrike, Sean Henry, and Dmitry Alperovich. And by the way, CrowdStrike is now ducking interviews with Voice of America. Read the article. Go back. It says must read number 2. Read that one. I didn't write it. Read that article. I want you to figure out what's going on here. Why would the DNC not allow the FBI to look at the servers? Furthermore, why would the FBI let them? If this is an issue of grave national security, and the reason I'm making a big deal of this is because our president, Donald Trump, tweeted about this the other night, and I'm answering him. I'm answering his question. Yes, James Comey testified in front of the Senate. Now, by the way, the reason he testified in front of the Senate is that the DNC lied just a couple of days earlier to BuzzFeed and told them that the FBI had never asked them to look at the servers. Comey testified that yes, we did multiple times. But he said it's okay because a well-respected private company decided what information to give us. This is on the video. A well-respected private company, that company is CrowdStrike, who was working for the DNC, Sean Henry, former FBI guy, and Dmitry Alperovich. But just a couple of weeks before that January 10th testimony by Comey, they had issued a report on December 22nd that claimed, now by the way, let me back up for a second. Let me do this. It claimed that Russian hackers using the same virus that got the DNC had destroyed 80% of Ukraine's howitzers, D-30 style howitzers. This has now been denied by both the Ukrainian Defense Ministry and by the group, this just came out today, and the group that CrowdStrike cited. But this is the group who we're getting all the information from, the CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike, who got this report completely wrong. This is the ultimate in fake news. They said howitzers were destroyed by Russians using the same software that was used to hack the DNC. And they used this to prove that it was the Russian government. And this happened 1 week before what? Does anyone remember what happened on December 29th? Anyone remember? Anyone remember? No, not Flynn. That's when the sanctions were issued against Russia and they released the JAR. Remember that joint report from the DHS and the FBI who never looked at the servers? I'm going to say that again. The FBI never looked at the servers. Now, Dmitry Alperovich, in interviews, explained the reason they released that report. The reason they released that report was to help tie in the fact that it was the Russians to the DNC attack. He said that in interviews. He said it bolstered their case. Yet it was completely made up, completely false, poorly citationed, incorrectly citation, and then later denied by the Defense Ministry. And by the way, the Defense Ministry of Ukraine denied that on January 6th. And on January 10th, yeah, that's right, the 6th. I'm doing this all from memory. And on January 10th, James Comey called them well-respected. This is a big deal. This is a big deal. This is a big deal. Now, I can report this story at Breitbart, and I have 3,400 words. I can do another story, but how do you break through the mainstream narrative? How do you do that? I've been going to these White House press briefings for about 3 weeks. And the way you break through that narrative, Hannity, I'd love to have Hannity on. By the way, I'm supposed to get media requests, so I guess if I'm fired, which I don't know if I'm fired, I'm just assuming I'm fired since I'm saying mean things about Matt, but he can't justify it. And I told him in an email, I said, you need to justify this. You need to justify this. My idea was to go to a press briefing and ask a cogent, specific question about it. I'm going to do the question again. This is the question. I'm going to go back and say this again. I have been told not to go to the White House again, or else. I've been told not to go to the White House again. Now, anybody who's seen me there knows, I'm not going to stop going to the White House. I'm not going to stop going to the White House. I was never given a cogent answer. No, not Matt Drudge, Matt Boyle. Who's my supervisor? Which is another question, but we'll leave that aside for now. I was told, don't go to the White House or else. I don't put up with or else's. I was told also in 2013 not to go to Lebanon. I was also told a couple of years ago not to report on Republican corruption. By the way, one of the guys who was reporting on Steve Stockman, he was just indicted. Now, in the case of Lebanon, I quit. In the other case, I've been fired. In this one, we'll see what's going on here. We'll see what's going on. But I'm not the one who needs to answer for this. Matt Boyle is. And I like Matt. This is not personal. But he needs to explain to people why he's pulling me off, trying to stop me from going to the White House. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. If Breitbart wants to fire me, I'll get someone else to give me a credential. Do you think I'll have a difficult time doing that? Because I don't. I don't think I'll have a difficult time doing that. I could get one tomorrow.